All right, hi everyone. I'm Kenyon. I'm a product manager at Algorand, and I'm moderating the Cryptographers panel. So let's start with some quick introductions. Maybe each of you can tell us who you are, what you do, and how you contribute to Algorand. Hugo?
So I'm Hugo Krawczyk. I advertise myself as employee number one of the foundation because the foundation was started with 5 cryptographers from IBM research that Silvio convinced us to come to the foundation and start it. And since you cannot say no to Silvio, we're here. We started doing everything from contracting insurances to securing billions of algos. And foundation grew a little bit to what it is now, and it's quite amazing. I'm very happy to see the situation now. And what I do, I'm supposed to do some research in my free time, but most of it these days I do university programs, research, and student funding and outreach.
Hi, everybody. I'm Chris Peikert. I'm the head of cryptography research at Algorand Inc. And the crypto research group has the task of converting and devising new research and using research that's in the literature and transforming that and bringing it into the product, the Algorand protocol, and all the supporting technology around Algorand. So we both do original research on a theoretical or applied level and then help convert that into the product. Most recently, in the last year and a half or so, we have been working on state proofs, which we'll talk a little bit about later in the session, which have gone from really a theoretical imagination, right, on paper to being a deployed product. So that's what we do in the group.
Hi, I'm John Woods, and I'm wondering, these two guys have Algorand socks on, and I wasn't given a pair. Where'd you get them?
Come by the office in Boston.
Okay, so I'm the CTO at the foundation, basically strategy and vision, you know? I'm just kidding. My job at the foundation is to, I guess, quarterback our general technology strategy and to promote adoption and use of Algorand to make it easier. And I think if you look at what I spoke about yesterday, AlgoKit, just trying to make things easier for developers to bring their vision to the mainnet and support the ecosystem.
Great, thank you. And if you're wondering why a product manager is moderating this panel, I'm pretty sure it's because Hugo wanted an excuse to gossip about my former thesis advisor.
That's true.
All right, so we'll start with a little level-setting question. So cryptography is a big part of our lives today. Every time we use a piece of technology, we're using cryptography, but we don't usually talk about it. So why is cryptography so much at the forefront of the conversation in blockchain? John, we'll start with you.
Oh, no. Okay. I guess because when you're building globally distributed systems like Algorand, you need a way to prove the veracity of a transaction. You need a way to ensure consensus. And so these types of things, so globally and in a distributed manner, reaching consensus on something in a way that everyone can trust that consensus has been reached with a degree of truth, proving that you are the owner of something or you are the rightful spender of some coins and someone else is not. These types of things are really hard computer science problems. And it turns out that we can use cryptography, or the primitives that people like Chris and Hugo have built in their career. We can build systems from these cryptographic Lego bricks that allow us to achieve this type of thing. They allow us to achieve truth in a system. They allow us to prove ownership in a mathematically verifiable way, and I guess most importantly, in a way that's very difficult or computationally heavy to forge.
Great. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about Algorand now. So Algorand was founded by a cryptographer who does not need to be named. So what makes, in terms of cryptography, what is different about Algorand's inception from other blockchains? Hugo?
So cryptography is essential for any blockchain, but in the case of Algorand, is not something that is part of the blockchain. It is the essence of the blockchain. When we talk about all the properties of scalability, decentralization, security, every one of these things come directly out of the cryptography. Let me spend a couple of minutes just giving an idea, because conceptually, what we are doing here is very simple, and that's one of the geniuses of Silvio, that he's able to do amazing stuff at conceptual simplicity and amazing creativity. So the basic issue is how to run randomness, and in Algorand we do that through this primitive called the verifiable random function. And doesn't matter what it is, but what I can tell about VRFs is that it has, at conceptual level, the same function of the trillion hashes that Bitcoin uses, except that it replaces the trillion hashes with a single mathematical operation that takes a fraction of a millisecond. So in Bitcoin, you have a dice with a trillion sides. You throw it, and you hope to get some number. And since you don't get it, you throw again and again and again and again. In Algorand, you have a device with a button that you press, and instantly you get a random value, which is of the same time that the Bitcoin would have. So the VRF is at the basis of the performance, the scalability, the security, because it is unpredictable and it is unbiasable. So that's one element of the randomness. The other element of randomness is that work in the blockchain is not done by all the nodes at the same time, but for achieving consensus, but about a small committee. So only a small committee is working at the same time. And the beauty of it is that if you have 10,000, let's say that the committee is 1,000, if you have 10,000 nodes, 1,000 members will be in the committee. If you have 1 million nodes, 1,000 participants in the committee. So this is an absolute amazing thing about scalability. Scalability, you can grow, you can grow, you can grow, but the work that you are doing for consensus is always fixed. And these also contribute to the 3 pillars that we were mentioning before. So this beauty, elegance, conceptual simplicity is at the basis of the thing, and this is very important because to grow this stuff for the future, you want technology that has these properties. Okay, we don't know exactly to what we will end or grow into, but having this simplicity, this amazing basis, is what gives Algorand, at least at the level of blockchain design, something that I don't think others have.
Great. It's interesting that you did not say the words pure proof of stake.
Yeah, well, I didn't say many words. And by the way, one thing I want to say, of course, this is the basis. Many things happen in Algorand, which, for example, an unique, amazing execution by the engineering teams. And so it's not the whole story, but it's important to have this core from which you can build all these things.
Solid core from which we can build.
Yeah.
And so Algorand's been around a few years now, and but that core has existed from the inception of the blockchain. But I know you've been working on things since then. So Chris, the topic of the day, topic of the year, really, in our space. Well, okay, maybe too big a statement, but state proofs. You gave a talk about state proofs yesterday. But can you tell us what makes state proofs such a big deal?
Yeah. So I think what's most exciting about state proofs is that they handle 2 really interesting problems with one solution. 2 birds with 1 stone, if you will. So 2 of the high priorities for Algorand are interoperability being able to interact and transact with others who are not necessarily running the Algorand protocol, even though they probably should be. But if they can't or won't, we can interoperate with them. And the second goal is something known as post-quantum security. And state proofs provide solutions to both of these goals. So to say a little bit more about each of those, for interoperability, the Algorand protocol, like Hugo was talking about, super elegant, super efficient. You get like instant finality. You get the entire world running the protocol. Everybody who's running the protocol comes to consensus very quickly about what transactions have occurred, and we can do thousands of transactions per second, and all the rest. But in order to have those benefits, you need to be running the protocol, and for various reasons, not all entities in the world can be running the protocol at once, although more and more are doing so. So if we want to interact, for example, with another blockchain like Ethereum, or we want to have light clients who may be coming online and then offline and not able to download everything all at once, they're not able to participate in the protocol, we'd still like to be able to prove the state of Algorand. What has been happening on Algorand in between the time that you last saw the state of Algorand. So state proofs provide a way of doing that, and you can prove to an outside entity what has happened in Algorand. This transaction has occurred, this balance is in place, so forth and so on. So that's the kind of high-level idea, is that you can very succinctly and efficiently prove things that have happened on Algorand to those who are not running the Algorand protocol. And the second thing is called post-quantum cryptography, or like quantum-safe cryptography. And this is a really interesting kind of far-out, but maybe not that far-out concern. So in the mid-1990s, a mathematician named Peter Shor showed that if one could build a sufficiently powerful quantum computer, these are special kinds of computers that use quantum mechanics in magical ways. If you could build such a quantum computer, you could break all of the widely used public key cryptography that has been in use for the last several decades. And that's a really scary thing if you think about it, right? We don't have quantum computers yet, and they're not really on the horizon yet, but people are building better and better, more powerful, small scale still, but quantum computers. And the trajectory of computing technology, over the last century has been really a kind of exponential growth curve. If you think of the original computers that were the size of refrigerators, and they're weaker than a pocket calculator that we have today, right? So the progress that computing technology has seen leads us to have to be concerned about, well, what happens if quantum computers do scale up to the size that would be sufficient to break cryptography? And this is the cryptography that's used all throughout all blockchains, right? The very basic bread and butter, digital signatures and proofs and all kinds of things. So there's been a large research effort over the past couple of decades all around the world to build cryptography that will be resistant to quantum attacks, that will still be secure even if quantum computers scale up. And so state proofs are now using exclusively cryptography that is now believed to be resistant to future quantum attacks. And what this allows us to say is to give, for example, a strong assurance on the integrity of the blockchain's history, of Algorand's history. Right? So by adding state proofs on, you can say that even if a quantum computer were to be developed, it wouldn't be able to fork the history of the chain. It wouldn't be able to create some alternative history, fool you into believing that something happened that didn't, because the cryptography that's protecting the integrity of the chain is now strong enough to resist quantum attacks in the future.
So I was thinking about this during your talk yesterday too. Right, research is funded by various organizations. Could we not? I think we can all agree that like quantum computers coming about, real powerful ones, would be bad. Could we just pause that research until we figure out the crypto side?
Yeah, that would be nice. Unfortunately, science and engineering doesn't really work like that. There are many people and organizations around the world who are very excited, and not just in the US, not just in Europe, not just in Asia, like all around the world, and they're kind of racing to see how quickly can we scale up quantum computers? So, sure, the US maybe could pause progress, but that wouldn't stop the rest of the world, or vice versa.
Right, okay. Okay, and so going back to state proofs, were state proofs, so you said that state proofs, they're good for post-quantum security, and they're good for interoperability. Was it those concepts that drove the development of state proofs, or did state proofs come about naturally and then were fitted in? Tell us a little bit about how your work goes as a cryptographer.
Sure. Yeah, so the origin of state proofs was in this paper by Silvio and others at Algorand called Compact Certificates. And this gave a template that showed how the Algorand chain could prove its state to others outside of the network. And that was a nice template because it solved the problem, again, in a very generic and abstract way. And then you could kind of plug in different components to it to instantiate it and make it real. And so we started from that base of the compact certificate and said, well, we can actually put in all post-quantum cryptography, fit in all the pieces, instantiate all the components with post-quantum cryptography, and the overall product will then be post-quantum secure. And so that was the genesis of it. And then when we said, hey, actually we want a good post-quantum integrity story that would make sense, we found that the compact certificates were a perfect fit for that. So kind of things came together. And when you have an elegant tool and an elegant solution, it's again and again we see that you find applications that you didn't originally expect, and the techniques are more powerful than just the first idea that they were intended for, right? And they kind of grow and become more and more useful in other contexts. So this was another case of that, where kind of two good things coming together.
Okay, got it. And Hugo, do you want to tell us a little bit about what cryptography, what elegant tools have you been working on the last 4 years?
As I said, I was working on contracting insurances yeah. So one element that is fundamental to to building systems around blockchains is privacy. And blockchain doesn't have native privacy. It's actually the other way. It's transparency. It provides integrity, but it's transparent, and that's one of the qualities of it. But that conflicts with privacy. Fortunately, cryptography has this magic of being able to reconcile conflicting requirements, eating the cake and keeping it. So we were working on techniques that will expand blockchains into a system that will also support privacy. So I don't want to get technical, but the idea is what you want to do is to refer to the blockchain as a trusted party. If you have a trusted party, everything is solved. You want to ask something about medical records, you can ask the trusted party. A trusted party means that always answers correctly and keeps secret whenever it keeps secrets. You can provide some, the results of an election, and the trusted party will decrypt it without saying anything about the different votes, et cetera, et cetera. So if you have that abstraction, you can get really, if you can implement that abstraction, you have a lot of strengths. So that's the idea. The idea is to build a system that will be equivalent to a trusted party, but that trusted party is the whole blockchain, in the sense that the only way that you're going to deviate from that trust of that party is to break the underlying protocol. If you break consensus in Algorand, for example, then everything built on top of that is in danger. And so we're building in such systems. Now, this is a system that allows you to do also state proofs. You know, if it's a trusted party, you just ask that party, what is block number 17, all right? And the point that the schemes that we use, the cryptographic schemes, will allow you, for example, to have a state proof that to check it is just, you know, it will be a regular signature. Everyone will know the public key of the blockchain, and there will be a signature that will tell you everything, like state proof do that now, but it will be more. It will, you know, you will have a medical records, and you will ask this distributed trusted party, you know, only decrypt these values for me, and stuff like that. So this is a very, very powerful abstraction, and that's, you know, something we are working to achieve. It's not something that will be implemented in the blockchain in the next few months, but yeah, we are definitely working on building something that can be implemented eventually.
Okay. So this is work in progress. So if I were to describe Utopia, I guess, when you're talking about privacy and trust, I guess it would look like I interact with the system, nobody knows who I am unless I want them to, and nothing ever happens that I don't expect to happen. Does that summarize it well, what we're going for?
Absolutely. I think so. And I think privacy is really important in blockchain. Privacy is important in general. I don't think people will be happy if folks knew, if I walked up to people in this room and said, well, how much do you earn? How much do your family earn? How much have you got in your bank account? People don't want to tell me. But right now, I can take someone's NFT, their woods.algo in my case, or their .algo address, pop it into a blockchain and see how much they have. I can see what NFTs they hold. These things, for me, are not desirable properties. There can be use cases for it, but in general, I think having privacy is very important. And so I think there's been interesting attempts at bringing privacy to blockchain, and people will know maybe from my tweets if you follow me. I'm passionate about Monero. I think it's an interesting project, and I was interested in Zcash, before they made a mess of it. But I think we should be moving towards a private blockchain, and I think the first step there may be, for example, to keep the transparent base layer. Okay, so you have, still no privacy around transactions, no privacy around account balances, but maybe you have privacy in terms of your contract interactions. So we could move towards a system where you're able to interact with a contract when so a smart contract on chain, people will know this, you're able to give it parameters and you call that contract to get it to do work for you. And so we could maybe have that piece be private, but maybe the outputs of the contract, for example, still be transparent. But I think it's the vision as well of Silvio, having spoken to him about it briefly, that privacy is generally important.
Great, so maybe let's look to, we've talked about the present, what we're currently working on, but let's look to the future for a moment. What do you see, John, as the biggest challenges that our industry as a whole faces, and how can cryptography help us there?
So I think probably the biggest challenge is user experience. I think we need to make it really easy for people to use. I think this stuff needs to, blockchain in general needs to be so transparent that folks don't even know they're using it. I mean, when you get paid at the end of the month, you don't know that, this has gone through a global network of fiat systems with communication from the European Central Bank and Swift messaging and other things, right? You just don't care. It just works. And so I think that's where we need to get to. I think in terms of cryptography helping us, I think it's going to help us achieve self-sovereign decentralized identity solutions. I think it's going to help us achieve...
Wait, sorry, what does that mean?
Well, this idea may be that your identity, sorry, yeah, fair enough. Your identity will be owned by you. So rather than a government issuing you a passport or a license, for example, you may have, you build an identity on blockchain in a private way where you can prove to people who you decide you're going to prove to your identity or your status. And I think cryptography is going to help us achieve that and proliferate it. I think it's going to help us achieve privacy, I would hope, on chain. And so I'm very excited about that. I think privacy and self-sovereign identity are probably the two killer ones for me.
Does that resonate with you, Hugo and Chris?
Yeah, I mean, definitely. I wanted to say something about Zcash and Monero. They do privacy-preserving transactions. I mean, moving money. They don't do privacy-preserving smart contracts. And what I was mentioning before is actually to have, if I want to run a smart contract that says, here is my encrypted will, when I die, open it to my five children. Where are the keys to decrypt that will, right? And the point is that smart contracts cannot carry keys, secret keys with themselves. So this is a very, very strong restriction of smart contracts, and that's one thing that cryptography can help improving. Identity is central to anything in blockchain. And it's very easy to do identity if you don't care about privacy. You put everything in the clear, and of course, people do care about privacy. So you want to build the identity to have all the properties, the functional properties, but also be privacy preserving. Yeah, so there is a lot of work to do in cryptography.
Absolutely.
I would say, can I just add, from the point of view of a researcher, it feels like the past 10 years or so have been a sort of golden age for cryptography research. The community has been building and coming up with concepts and ideas and constructions and so forth that do things that 15 years ago we couldn't have even imagined. Like even the concept of could you do this wasn't even in people's minds. And now we have, at least on paper, really scientifically sound and rigorous, if not efficient yet, right, solutions to these kinds of things. So it's a really exciting and vital time, and ideas are coming out so fast and so furious that it's even hard to keep up with the latest awesome ideas. At this stage, they're very theoretical for the most part. Like Hugo was talking about with the privacy on blockchain, with this emulating a perfect trusted party. Right now, it's very conceptual, but there are small pieces of the picture that are becoming more and more practical, more and more efficient. And it feels like, sort of, if I can rewind a little bit, in the 1980s, this topic of multi-party computation, secure multi-party computation, was also in a very similar kind of situation. Lots and lots of progress, super, brand new ideas, just really a vital area with tons of fast progress. But everybody kind of recognized at the time, this is all theoretical. You would never do this in practice. It's way too inefficient. It's way too much communication, et cetera, et cetera. Well, fast forward 2.5 decades, and now people are doing like really practical, really useful multi-party computations in practice with real parties, separated by oceans and so forth. So the amount of progress from what was seen as completely pie-in-the-sky theory to 25 years later running real things in real practice and in real products is just astounding. And I think that when you look at the last 10 or 15 years of cryptography research that people thought, it was just completely theoretical, it's now starting to kind of approach the horizon of, hey, we can maybe do this in practice, or we can do pieces of it at least. We can do the interesting parts in reality, thanks to a whole lot of further theoretical research, further engineering, lots more good ideas. So it's really exciting. Just the next 10 years, what are we going to see in 2035, right? I think we'll be surprised how far these things that we're talking about now have come.
One thing I want to say is that Chris said that 10, 15 years ago, we wouldn't believe what is happening now. I have to say that 1-2 years ago, I couldn't believe what happened now. I was in the Stanford blockchain conference in the summer, And first of all, the average age of researchers, engineer is, I don't know, 20 low. I mean, absolutely amazing. And the progress is just unbelievable. So, and you know, the blockchain owes cryptography its existence, but now cryptography is being very, very improved thanks to blockchain. And one element that I want to mention, because I think it's one of the very nice things that are happening and will happen more and more, is this thing called SNARK, or verifiable computation in general, that someone can do a very complex computation and give you the result, and you don't have to do the computation again. The result comes with a proof that the computation was done correctly. Actually, it's part also of the work that Chris is doing with state proofs. But this is an amazing, powerful tool, and it's improving as we speak.
Yeah, it's mind-blowing to me. Okay, one more question for the panel here. Can you tell me generally, just what are you most excited about in blockchain right now? John?
Taking Algorand to the top 10, you know what I'm saying? Let's get hyped. We're going to get it there. Absolutely, to the top 10.
Chris?
That's it. Oh boy, I don't know if I can be that succinct. I wish I could. But actually, the area of cryptography that I'm most excited about is something I call like succinct cryptography. And Hugo just mentioned it briefly. I'll say a little more detail. The idea is that you could do some very complicated computation and then with a very small amount of data prove that you've done the computation correctly. And there are all kinds of different flavors of this. Another would be you have some big database of data, maybe gigabytes of data, and you are able to compress it down to a very small amount of data that still commits to the entire database. So it says, here's a very tiny piece of information, but now I'm locked in, and my data is now committed to, right? And then I could later run database queries, or you could ask, okay, well, what's the sum of the entries, or please select these entries, or so forth. And I could give you the results of that database query with a proof that they are correct and consistent with the original small commitment that I give you. So there's all kinds of different permutations of these kinds of ideas, but basically the overall idea is transmitting very small amounts of data and very short and easy to check proofs that computations were done correctly on that data. And these can offer you privacy, right? You don't have to reveal your entire database. You can only reveal the results of the queries along with proofs that they're correct. It gives you, saves you communication, saves you how much storage you need on the blockchain, all the rest. So I'm most excited about succinct cryptography.
Chris, that's a really good answer.
Oh, thanks.
Hugo, you're in trouble now. What
So first of all, I'm disappointed at what John said. Top 10, why 10? Why 10? I mean, so I want to answer the question about excitement. I mean, there are so many aspects of excitement, and certainly in our profession as cryptographers. But personally, what excites me the most is the potential of blockchains to do good to the world. I truly believe in this. It's not an easy path to that, and there are always people using anything for bad purposes, so you cannot avoid that. But I really think we have some wonderful projects in Algorand, like the projects that Silvio mentioned yesterday, like AgroToken, that can go from serving rich producers to serving very small producers. But currently, they are doing it in Latin America. This can be actually spread everywhere. And of course, actually, I was not in the panel with Matt, but I'm sure they discussed some beautiful things that are being done. So it was one of my motivations when I had to take the hard decision of leaving my comfortable position in IBM and move to the thing, and I still believe in that will happen.
All right, Hugo, you gave my favorite answer. Thank you.
You mean the one about John?
All right, we've got time for a couple questions from the audience, if anybody has something to ask our cryptographers.
Chris was saying backstage that there's not a question that you guys can come up with that he can't answer. So how about it?
All right, Pablo has a question.
Yeah.
Privacy and compliance.
Yeah, I think it's tricky. I know, it's okay, I heard it. So the question was, for folks who didn't hear it, how can we do private smart contracts in a way that's compliant and reasonable? And so, I worked at the European Central Bank for a while. So I understand why compliance is important, and I understand why regulation is important. And I know it's not sexy, it's not cool, and people see it as getting in the way, but it does protect the consumer and it protects the economies. And so we can't just forget about it. And we do, of course, have to stay within the bounds of the law, some of us. But I think the answer there is either you have privacy that is, as I described earlier, where it's private at the point of execution, but not in terms of its output, so that you can have privacy when you're bidding on something, so that folks don't know exactly how much money you've got, and the guy who's selling doesn't know exactly where you're at. But at the same time, after the transaction is done in private, then you can see. Or I think the other option is you bring the regulator on the journey with you. So either you give them some kind of God-level knowledge of the system, which I'm not a big fan of because I see it as a backdoor, or you build a system in a way that's optionally disclosable to a regulator should they request it. I think they're kind of the ways. It's a good question. I don't think we figured it out yet.
Well, I think that I said before, cryptography is great about
Reconciliating.
Conflicting requirements. And that's, transparency and privacy, and we have ways of doing the things. If you think about this abstraction of a trusted party, then, for example, if you can do any transaction under $10,000, but if you do something above that, you have to inform someone. So if you have a trusted party, the trusted party will disclose nothing about amounts under 10,000, and it will disclose the 10,000 action to the authorities. So we can build that. We can build things in which you can prove that the identity that you have has a KYC and some other properties without actually disclosing your identity, or without even being able to trace this to some other operations that you did in the blockchain. So none of the things are trivial. I mean, it's not like computing a hash and putting it in the blockchain, but we definitely have a lot of technology, cryptographic technology already, that can be used. And yes, I mean, in a few years, we will see much more of this actually happening in practice.
Okay, I think we've got time for one more question. There was one in the back.
I'm sorry. My name is Al.
Yeah.
I mostly wanted to ask a question for Chris. I'm curious what software testing methodologies are being used when dealing with verification of fundamental security principles of state proofs. Is it something that involves simulation of actual quantum attacks on simulated quantum computers, or it's something that sort of innovation in the testing methodologies in regards to dealing with simulation of quantum attacks? Thank you.
Right, thanks. Yeah, so a couple of things to unpack there. One is, what is the basis for the belief that these cryptographic schemes are quantum secure, right? And like with any cryptographic technique, whether you think it's quantum secure or not, that comes from many people over many years and decades trying to attack the cryptographic system, trying to attack the underlying mathematical problems that the cryptography is based on. So there have been many serious attempts by quantum experts who kind of know every algorithmic trick in the book that quantum computers are good at to attack the kinds of like lattice problems and other problems that our post-quantum cryptography is based on. And so far, they've kind of come up with not much, basically. Cryptography is always contingent. Silvio likes to say cryptographers seldom sleep well at night because what can happen, someone may come up with a brilliant idea that breaks the cryptography that you thought was secure, right? And so the confidence only comes with lots of sustained effort over many, many years, lots of people trying out ideas. We know that in the case of the cryptography we've deployed, it has a very long history going back to the mid-90s of people making serious attempts, using the best quantum algorithms that are known to man, and trying to break these things and being unsuccessful in it. So, hope that answers the question.
All right, we've got no more time. Thank you, cryptographers, for taking the time to talk with us today.
Thanks.
Thanks,
Thank you.
All right.